Çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Honorable Prime Minister, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and distinguished guests, welcome to the public lecture titled Power Shift, Strategic Choices for Malaysia and Türkiye. We are deeply honored to welcome you all here in Ankara today for this high-level discussion jointly organized by SETA and the government of Malaysia. Today's lecture brings together policymakers, academics, diplomats, and the distinguished guests, reflect on the evolving partnership between Malaysia and Türkiye, as well as the broader strategic dynamics shaping our region and the international system. This event also takes place in a very significant year for SETA, as we mark the 20th anniversary of the Foundation's establishment. Over the past 2 decades, SETA has contributed to policy-oriented research, public diplomacy, and strategic dialogue in Türkiye and beyond. So we are honored to mark this significant milestone with this today's high-level discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, without further ado, it is my pleasure to officially kick off the program with the opening remarks. Please join me in welcoming to the stage the General Coordinator of SETA, Nebi Mesh, to deliver the opening remarks.
Honorable Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim, distinguished guests, it's my great pleasure to welcome you to today's event, Power Shift, Strategic Choices for Malaysia and Türkiye, organized by the SETA Foundation. I would like to begin by expressing my sincere gratitude to Honorable Prime Minister for accepting our invitation and for honoring us with his presence here today. Since establishment of diplomatic relations in 1964, Turkey and Malaysia relations have steadily deepened within a strategic framework. Over the past 61 years, our two countries have developed a shared strategic vision, grounded in mutual trust and brotherhood. In recent years, relations between Ankara and Kuala Lumpur have gained renewed momentum. At a time when global uncertainty and fragility are increasing, this partnership offers a hopeful and exemplary model to the international community. During his visit to Malaysia in February last year, President Erdogan emphasized both the scope and future vision of our bilateral relations, while also driving attention to the profound transformation underway in the global system. He underlined that the world is drifting toward a new struggle for power sharing, accompanied by deep political, social, and economic ruptures on global scale. Today, as international norms are eroding, international law is increasingly disregarded, and destructive competition is felt across regions. We once again see how accurate this assessment was. It is becoming ever clear that the normative structure of international relations is being reduced to mere rhetoric. Those who remain silent in the face of Israel destabilizing attacks across the Middle East, and who Netanyahu government, despite these actions, are fueling a fire that threatens all humanity at the cost of contradicting their own professed values. In an era where humanitarian, moral, and legal principles are trampled upon, the fundamental question is clear. the stand with the just and against the oppressor. On this occasion, I would like to express my deep appreciation to Honorable Prime Minister and to the people of Malaysia for their principled and resolute stand against the aggression of occupying state of Israel, particularly the genocide in Gaza, which has plunged our region into the catastrophe. The fractures in the global order, along with growing economic and political uncertainties and emerging security risk, point to one undeniable reality. New approaches, new partnerships, and above all, new perspectives are inevitable. In a rapidly transforming world, only those who adopt a strong, principled, and autonomous stance will be able not only to survive, but also to shape their own future. In this context, as fragilities within the global system deepen and traditional alliance gradually lose their effectiveness, Türkiye launched the Asia and Eve initiative in 2019. This initiative reflects Türkiye's determination to strengthen its engagement with Asia and to fully realize the region's vast cooperation potential. With Türkiye's growing strategic autonomy and its strengthening position in the international system, relations with Asia constitute a critical dimension that will shape global dynamics in the decades ahead. Within this framework, the deepening relationship with Malaysia, one of Asia's leading powers, opens new horizons for the peoples of both countries. Bilateral trade has already exceeded $5 billion, with a shared objective of reaching $10 billion in the near future. This expanding economic partnership also reflects the growing ambition of Ankara and Kuala Lumpur to play a more influential role in the global system. The visionary framework introduced by Honorable Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim under the concept of Malaysia Medeni will contribute not only to Malaysia's rising profile in the international arena, but also the broader Muslim world and global community. In line with this vision, we attach great importance to further strengthening our ties and deepening cooperation with Malaysian think tanks and academic institutions. Before concluding, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to my colleagues at SETA Foundation for their dedication and efforts in making this event possible. I would also like to express my deepest appreciation to Ambassador of Malaysia to Ankara, Mr. Sezali bin Mustafa Kemal, and his esteemed team with whom we have worked closely throughout this process. Finally, I would like once again to thank Honorable Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim for honoring us with his presence today and for the valuable address we will have the privilege of hearing shortly. With my kind regards, thank you very much again.
Dr. Nebi Mish, the General Coordinator of SETA, thank you so much for these insightful remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, it is my great honor and privilege to invite to stage our keynote speaker. Please join me in welcoming the Honorable Prime Minister of Malaysia, Anwar Ibrahim, to deliver the opening remarks, the keynote address. Okay. Thank you so much.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم. Minister of Defense, Yasar, fellow ministers present, friends from the SETA Foundation, thank you very much. It's a great honor and pleasure to be back here in Türkiye and more so to SETA. And incidentally, I've had this 20-year-old relations with SETA from the time when Dr. Ibrahim Khalil was at the fore. And I've learned immensely, benefited from your research, understanding, and commitment to collaborate efforts in terms of forging international understanding and cooperation. And now I think we've gone to a new stage of relationship where SETA and ISIS will form some form of an understanding to ensure that not only the relationship between the two countries is further fortified, but to create this sort of awareness and understanding beyond the friendship and brotherhood between leaders. As you know, I have an excellent personal relationship with President Erdogan for decades. But as I said, our countries must forge this sort of an sphere in the various strategic, defense, cultural, educational, research, because that would ultimately determine the success of our societies. So thank you again. This morning, our friends in SETA did give me some briefings. I've had too many briefings from SETA already, and I must say that I would continue to benefit because it's one of the outstanding research and international foundation that has contributed immensely to the understanding not only of the people of Türkiye, but of course people in this region. And that's why I'm rather supportive and excited with the fact that you have now formalized the relations with an important strategic think tank in Malaysia, ISIS. Now, our interests are, of course, complementary. We have seen now the period of uncertainties alluded to earlier. I made references to post-normal times, the complexities, the contradictions, the chaos being created, and in the political arena, the sheer hypocrisy and contradictions in terms of what has been pronounced and proclaimed, and the actions implemented on the ground, whether it's Gaza or Venezuela or what have you. So I think it is therefore important for countries, emerging economies, to realize that our future is not necessarily be tied to the dictates of the big powers, be it United States or China. And that's why I think I believe that my colleague, President Erdogan, have taken a very realistic position, as we have in Malaysia, even when we were presiding ASEAN last year, a very strategic position to engage aggressively, actively, to benefit our country and our region by fomenting strong relationship, both with the United States and with China, but at the same time, understanding and accepting the fact that our region, and particularly in Southeast Asia, has this enormous potential to effectively collaborate in terms of trade, investments, and all related fields. And of course also to open up new markets. That is why we are, like Türkiye, in the regional setting, in the OIC, of course supporting the endeavors of the United Nations as an effective multilateral institution, but also to join new initiatives that could broaden our horizon and extend our penetration to new trading alignments, such as with within BRICS, for example, and any sort of a third world network arrangements. I made a particular reference to BRICS because I am, like many of you, rather excited and supportive of the need to forge new collaboration, new alliances that will benefit us, and not just lament and regret with the fact that major countries are not necessarily consistent in their policies, supporting rule-based international order or rule-based trading arrangements, but doing nothing, hoping that things will change. No, things will not change. That's why our priority is governance, domestic policies, stability, and of course, clarity in economic policies, and ensuring that our system of governance in combating corruption and making sure that there's order and justice for all is implemented as a showcase to our society and to the region and the world that we can govern. And with that understanding, forge new alliances with emerging economies, because to build up that potential. Now, I mean, this is essentially we're talking about middle powers. And I've gone through some of these research and writings of SETA, sent to me occasionally by Dr. Ibrahim, and I hope the new team won't forget us, the old friends, where the thrust is again forging strength domestically and new alliances. And then take a very consistent, coherent moral voice, and not be discouraged by the prevalent forces of happenings and feeling virtually helpless. What the world requires now is voice of conscience, a consistent moral voice for order. It may not be that profound. Nonetheless, you have emerged in your history against all forms of oppression, the old or the new, the east or the west. Similarly, we gain independence because of our belief in certain principles of human dignity. What in Islamic terminology is karamah insaniyah. وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. That Allah exalted the children of Adam because of the human dignity, because of the moral conscience, because of the sense of justice and humanity which transcend all communities, races, or religious denominations. And I think that should be the consistent and coherent moral voice which we have to pursue with such strength. Now I recall this 13th century Turkish poet, Yunus Emre, which is more familiar to the Turks than to our region. But as you know, I, in my crazy ways, always trying to promote these ideas, great sages, and to popularize, including the great Turkish poet Yunus Emre in the 13th century. War is cut short by a word, and a word heals the wounds. And there is a word that changes poison into butter and honey. Well, he was talking about a moral life. This was a spiritual, moral, ethical voice of conscience. It's not about politics. But his insight applies more broadly. It reminds us that judgment matters as much as force. And that language, used with discipline and restraint, can still after the course of events. Now, Malaysia and Türkiye is aligned on many questions of consequence. It's interesting, we're world apart in terms of geographical distance, but Malaysians follow the development in Turkey. In this age where you have so much hypocrisy and lack of courage and lack of conscience, you have emerged as a voice of reason, having the courage to state facts as they are and to condemn without reservations the sheer atrocities and genocide inflicted upon the people of Gaza by the Israeli regime. And but at the same time, having this brilliance and diplomatic skills to continue to engage, because ultimately what the world needs is not only a moral voice of conscience, but also the wisdom to navigate in this uncertain and complex world. Now, we are, of course, a relatively smaller country and went through an initial political turmoil, not so much an upheaval. And I was joking with my colleagues from SETA that sometimes we tend to say, well, alhamdulillah, we're very far from this region. We don't have too many problems and issues. And you know, we had slight skirmishes between Cambodia and Thailand, which had I and my colleagues, Minister of Foreign Affairs this year, spent so much time and effort to try and resolve. And alhamdulillah, to a large extent, resolved. But 5-6 people killed, and it created such an uproar. So the concern, not only by people of both countries, but people, neighboring countries and ASEAN, everybody saying, come on, do something. You know, we have to stop this. And I said, well, alhamdulillah, it's a very positive sign that a few people killed and a few thousand misplaced or displaced. And it became such a concern. In some countries, you have thousands killed, hundreds and thousands homeless, and it doesn't prick the conscience of the people. So what went wrong? Why is it with this sophistication of the new technology and AI and such phenomenal progress you see and witness in countries, you find this sheer deficit in moral and ethical values? So I'm here to represent a country, but I'm proud to say that we are struggling very hard with this Madani framework, because yes, we need new technology. We have to grasp the new technology. We are fortunately leading in the semiconductor data centers and AI in our region. But we are mindful of the fact, like Turkey, we are really grounded in our history, culture, and identity. And we also realize that a country cannot merely succeed by culture and identity. At the same time, we are not able to succeed with just craving for unrelentless progress, unbridled capitalism, and new technology without that shared concern for humanity, for justice, for truth in our country, in our region. Having said that, we are not, of course, free from all problems and issues. As I've said, we are also at the center, very close in Southeast Asia and Asia, this growing tension between the United States and China. Our seas are surrounded by what is called the South China Sea. But I would say again that we are realistic enough to navigate wisely, to say that whilst the United States remain our number one player in terms of investments and trade, China is becoming a very important neighbor. We must continue to engage, maintain excellent relations with our emerging neighbor economically and militarily. But we are not oblivious to the fact and events happening in this region. That's why I made reference to the events in Palestine and what's unfolding in Gaza. When President Trump was in Malaysia, I took efforts to commend him for the remarkable feat initiative to try and partly resolve, but also at the same time to impress upon him that gross injustice continued to be perpetrated against the people of Gaza, notwithstanding the agreement or the 20-point arrangement. So this is a case in point where the international system and order has failed, where political leaders have shown so much contradiction and hypocrisy, where democracy and human rights have rendered useless to many and being questioned by many in our societies. Because now we value these huge, impressive pronouncements, not by their pious platitudes and rhetoric, but by their determination, commitment, and capacity to affect these changes and implement these reforms or policies in a consistent, coherent manner. So, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the actions that countries like ours take will not resolve every contest. What I have attempted to deliberate certainly is not a formula, panacea for all issues or problems. But they will certainly determine the room to maneuver, whether law still constrains power. And certainty is receding. The cost of miscalculation is rising. As I said, I think you've seen a very strong message. This is not the time to stand apart. That is the work ahead. And it is the work we should, including people of Malaysia and Türkiye, should do together. Tashakur. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Prime Minister. We kindly ask you to remain on the stage as we'll proceed with the Q&A session. Yeah, please. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to invite to stage our moderator, Dr. Murat Yeşiltaş, the Foreign Policy Studies Director at SETA. The floor is yours, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Prime Minister, thank you very much for your speech. It was a very fruitful speech. Thank you for this. And I would like to start with the question by taking or collecting the question from the audience with your permission. So, Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to give the floor to you to take your question. And if you have a question, please raise your hands. Okay. So, please. Someone can check the microphone, please.
Selamat datang, dear President. Saya Ferhat Durmaz. Saya belajar di Politics di University Islam Antarabangsa Malaysia. Serenok jumpa awak di sini. Saya bekerja di University Ankara. With your kind permission, I want to learn that. As you said that China is an important country for Malaysia. Also, South China Sea dispute is a big challenge for ASEAN countries and Malaysia. How can ASEAN overcome this dilemma? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Honorable Prime Minister.
Terima kasih. Mau jawab dalam bahasa Malaysia. Baik. This refers to the ASEAN position vis-à-vis the South China Sea. We said we continue to engage. As far as Malaysia is concerned, there are of course conflicting claims, but we have not had issues, no skirmishes. There are some problems with the Philippines. But our position is, and I think the Chinese have also responded, that number one is UNCLOS. Must commit ourselves to the UNCLOS law of the sea arrangements.